Welcome back, everyone, to HP Critical, a podcast where my friends and I talk all things gaming. I'm Jerel, and once again, I am joined by Brandon, Cameron, and Chris as we continue our What is Kingdom Hearts podcast. So they've been talking to me about exactly what Kingdom Hearts is, and if I'm not mistaken, we have gone through Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts 2, Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days, and Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. If you haven't listened to the first episode of the podcast, please do so. And so, to continue on, we're going to continue through with the story, picking up from whatever is after Birth by Sleep.
I do want to say this.
Yes, go ahead.
These guys are the MVPs. Like,
honestly,
they're doing awesome at summarizing these games. And, you know, I love Kingdom Hearts, but I'm really bad at summarizing the story, so thank you so much for doing that, guys.
And also, thank you for answering all my questions. I know I keep interrupting you guys, but I'm just trying to also, you know, get a proper understanding of Kingdom Hearts for myself and for listeners, so thank you guys for being so patient and answering all the questions and doing these summaries. You guys are literally the best.
Our pleasure.
I mentioned I got the Kingdom Hearts experts here. I'm very happy. Anyway, yeah, so after Birth by Sleep is...
Coded. Kingdom Hearts Coded.
Oh, just kidding. Okay, Kingdom Hearts Coded, which is a mobile game?
It was originally, and then they made it was an episodic mobile game, and then they eventually made a DS port, in Japan only, and then they released Kingdom Hearts Recoded, which was a DS remake of the game, you know, taking all the episodes and adding a lot more content to it.
So what exactly is Coded?
So, Coded. It takes place directly after Kingdom Hearts 2, but does incorporate things that we have already covered up to this point. So basically, at the very end of Kingdom Hearts 2, after Sora, Riku, and Kairi were finally reunited and went back to the islands, they received a mysterious letter from King Mickey, and Coded will finally... Coded, for me, it was a big deal for me as a Kingdom Hearts fan, because we finally got to see what was in that damn letter after maybe 10 years of waiting.
Right,
yeah. So basically, you know, everything seems to be peaceful. They're all back in the castle. Jiminy Cricket, who had accompanied Sora as their journalist and keeping track of everything, was finally getting ready to sit back and compile his journal so he can add it to the library in King Mickey's castle. Only to find a mysterious message that he didn't write. The message was, "We must return. Their hurting will be mended when you return to end it." And I'm like, what the hell is this? So they brings it to Mickey, and then they decide, okay, why don't we digitize the entire journal in our super futuristic computer so that we can find out what this message means? But as soon as they try to do that, some mysterious virus blocks come out of nowhere, threatening to not only delete all the stuff in their journal, but they'll also never find out what that message meant. So what do we do about this? Hey, let's make a digital version of Sora to go fight the blocks. So,
oh my god, is that really what happens?
That's literally it. Like they have to get rid of these viruses. They don't want to go in there themselves because it might be dangerous. So let's make a digital version of Sora to go fight it. So the main character of Coded is Sora, but it's not the real Sora. It's a digital Sora, and it's specifically created from data from Kingdom Hearts 1. So Sora acts exactly the way he did in Kingdom Hearts 1, because it is that version of Sora, because it is based on Jiminy's very detailed journal entries of him, I suppose. So, like Chris mentioned in part 1 of our podcast, it's a lot of retreading of old ground because it is going back to Kingdom Hearts 1 worlds. It's probably the least Disney that the Kingdom Hearts series has actually had, which is saying a lot. But what does keep the gameplay interesting is that even though you are going back through the same worlds that you did go through in Kingdom Hearts 1, and not even all of them, too, it's just like whatever worlds did get infected, which I guess they're ballers in AF because they managed to stop the viruses before they spread to all the worlds from Kingdom Hearts 1, so you didn't even have to go to all of them. But yeah, you just go through them, and there's like different gameplay for each segment. Like there's a side-scrolling segment, there's a shoot 'em section.
It's a turn-based segment.
Yes, if you go to Olympus Coliseum, you get to have Hercules and Cloud Strife in your party member and do a turn-based battle section. It is really cool. And the cool thing about that world is you only need to do a certain amount of that world, but if you go back, you can fight new bosses as well and get little bonus story. Yeah, there's get little even bonus stories. You can even go all the way to fight the Ice Titan as well. It's like the true final boss.
I never even knew that. Wow.
Yeah. It's hard once you go past what you need to do in that level, but it's completely optional. Yeah, there's all that. And again, there's not a whole bunch of story stuff that comes into play, like major story stuff. It's basically them trying to eliminate the viruses within the data world.
I would add this, though. It does include a wrench in the story called the Tome of Prophecies.
Indeed it does, because the real, not Data, the real Maleficent and Pete do step into this story, and they are looking for the Book of Prophecies, which doesn't get explained until later games. Basically, the Book of Prophecies foretells everything that is to come in the future, and Maleficent thinks she can find it within this Data world, and so that's why she's here, and the Data sort of has to confront her. Cool thing about this story as well, that's not really important, but I thought it was pretty cool, is that because it is a Data sword, he's also using kind of like a Data keyblade for most of the story. But because it is Data, not the real thing, Maleficent is at some point in the story is able to just like blow it up. Like, since Sora has no keyblade.
Right.
And so you have one story segment where the real Donald and Goofy go into the Data world and fight with Sora. And the cool gameplay element of that is that you can't fight with Sora. So instead, you're doing like Pikmin-like commands to have Donald and Goofy fight for you. Like, you have to give them like direct commands and they'll fight the enemies for you. And you got to keep Sora safe while doing that. Until he manages to find the real Keyblade and use it, because even though he's Data, his heart is strong enough to use the real one and like fight back. It's a pretty cool segment. But all that happens. Recoder has a really weird ending because you find the source of these data blocks, which is like a virus that came from Sora, the real Sora's darkness. You do that, and by doing that, you basically have to reset the data world, which means Sora will forget everything. It really gears itself up as being the ending of the story, but then they realize, oh wait, we saved the day, but we haven't found out what that message was. Oh damn, we need Sora's help again, even though he doesn't remember us anymore because we literally just rebooted his memory. Yeah. Yep. The story ends. But they realize, oh no, we never found out what that message was. So
But I remember it resets twice.
I think it resets twice. But the first one I remember for sure, because they Sora literally remembers nothing.
Wait. So they went in there to find out the message. They didn't find out the message because the world was reset. And then they
had to reboot it because of all the viruses. Like the entire message plot line gets interrupted by the viruses. And once they defeat the viruses, they have to reset, and they realize they didn't find out what the message was. So they had to go back in. And that leads Sora to go into Castle Oblivion, which is weird because he doesn't remember it, and neither does Jiminy, but the part of Nominee that says, thank Nominee, I guess had enough information that they could recreate Castle Oblivion. That part is a little confusing to me. But either way, you go to Castle Oblivion, and that's when Sora has to confront a Data Roxas that basically teaches him the meaning of hurt, because if you want to mend hurt, you have to know hurt yourself. So this ends up being an important lesson for Sora, even though it's not even really Sora that's going through it. But basically, the message was basically saying that, hey, there's some people out there who still need help, even though you saved the worlds. Terra Van and Aqua are still out there. Roxas, Xion, and Axor are still out there. They need help. And so that's what ends up becoming the message that Mickey has to send to Sora to basically get them back up, because all this is happening and they need help. Also, the secret ending is probably the most important part of Coded, because Yensid tells Mickey that, hey, we need to stop Xehanort. It's like, wait. Mickey's like, wait. We stopped Xehanort. We defeated this half, Ansem, and then we defeated this half, Xemnas. But then Yensid says, yeah, we did. So what happens was, if you defeat both the Heartless and a Nobody of somebody, their original self can reconstruct. Therefore, Xehanort's coming back because you defeated both halves of him. So if we're going to stop him for good this time, we need Sora and Riku to be Kingdom Keyblade Masters. So bring them back up here. We need them to become Masters. They need to take a test, which leads directly into Dream Drop Distance, which is all about taking that test.
Beautifully done.
That's literally all that's important Coded.
Damn. Oh, I mean, okay, that sounded like a lot. So what I got from that was basically that they went to find out this message in a digital world, and they didn't find it out, so they had to go back. But then they forgot that they had been there because of past events.
Mickey, like, the people of the real world didn't forget anything. It's all the Data denizens that forgot what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, once they got rid of the viruses.
And that leads
to my knowledge, I don't think the Data Sora has ever come back besides Coded. I think that was the one and done for him.
Okay. And you said that leads us directly into Dream Drop Distance. So,
directly to, yes. And I do, one last thing I want to say is because, yes, they do establish that if a Nobody and Heartless of an individual is defeated, the reset is complete. That, of course, means Xehanort. But that also means all the other organization members that were defeated will recomplete, because Sora, of all the Heartless he's defeated, has most certainly defeated their Heartless at some point along the way. So that's it as a plot point in Dream Drop Distance, that a lot of organization members do come back as their original selves. Oh yes, Unversed. Yes. So those are because we live in that is in an era where Heartless and Nobodies did not yet exist in the realm of light. They had to make another villain that the Keyblade wielders would fight. So that became the Unversed, which are fledgling negative emotions that their origin was unknown for most of the game. However, in Ventus' story in Birth by Sleep, it is revealed that these Unversed actually do come from Vanitas. When they were forcefully split apart between the light and darkness, Vanitas had like a lot of these emotions that he could somehow channel into monsters. So they decided, hey, if we use that to test Ventus, make him stronger, as well as make Terra potentially kill Aqua and make Terra stronger as well, we can use that to our advantage. And every time an Unverse is destroyed, it goes right back to Vanitas, so he can just keep respawning them as much as he needs to keep their agenda going. And so that's why when Vanitas was disappeared at the end of Birth by Sleep, Unversed stopped appearing in the world because they came from him.
Okay. And that brings us into Dream Drop Distance, so please. This game has those, like, Chirithy-looking things.
The Dream Eaters.
The Dream Eaters.
Yeah, so, I don't know what's going on. Please, someone explain to me what happens in that one.
So Dream Drop Distance is probably the game where the franchise really goes, in my opinion, in a weird path. Yes. So Dream Drop is a game where Sora and Riku take their Mark of Mastery exam, where they have to go into these sleeping worlds and basically wake them up. And throughout the game, you switch between Sora and Riku using a drop system, which was a very divisive mechanic. I personally didn't hate it, but I know that some.
I really didn't like it just because you're in the middle of a boss battle, you've run out of drop, and some bosses immediately switch to Riku, you're on the green bar. I'm shit.
And some bosses took advantage of that. They would fire a mist that lowered your drop gauge so that they would be able to get all their health back, and it was so devious.
Yep. No, I enjoy. I thought it was cool, but I also think this game should have been a Riku only game, but that's another. We can talk about that later. So basically Yensid's like, hey, go do this and open up wake up these sleeping worlds. And as you go throughout, you run into young Xehanort. You basically find out can time travel. And oh god, why did they introduce time travel in this franchise?
Yeah, it's a convoluted mess.
It really.
That's my biggest criticism of the story so far.
It really ends up messing with the whole franchise, to be honest. Where basically, when young Xehanort is on, you find out that Xehanort is actually was a resident of Destiny Island when he was young, and he. He's like a teen. He's like a late teenager, you'd probably say, young Xehanort. And
he looked like he might have been 17 or 18 or something.
Yeah, and he was basically told from himself, "Hey, I need you to do this. Here's the ability to do this. Go do this, and then come back when you're done." Like that type of thing. And so that's basically what he's doing throughout the game, is just trying to manipulate Sora and Riku. And it gets to the point where Sora ends up going too far deep into the sleeping worlds, and he basically falls into young Xehanort's trap, and then Riku gets out, and then Yensid says yo, or I don't know if Yensid tells Riku to, or Riku just decides to go back in and save Sora.
Riku decides.
Yeah, Riku just decides to do that.
Interesting thing that's going on during this story too is both Sora and Riku are in the realm of dreams throughout the entirety of the game. But as you're completing the worlds, Yensid and Mickey start to realize with horror that Xehanort has them in this trap. And getting them out of the realm of sleep is very difficult because it's not an easily accessible world the same way realm of light, darkness, and in between are.
Yeah. And, that's kind of one of the things that's kind of funny is that, Yensid knew that this was a possibility that could happen, but sent them in anyway.
LOL.
All right, Yensid. Fuck you too. So Riku goes back in, and he ends up defeating young Xehanort to a certain degree, and saving Sora and getting him out of there. Yensid promotes Riku to a Keyblade Master, but fails Sora because he was manipulated by Xehanort.
Wait, what?
Well, it's not so much that that's part of it, but it's also because he fell to darkness, he didn't have the power. So even if Yensid wanted to pass him, Sora does not have the master power, so he couldn't.
He didn't gain the power of waking, which is very important.
Exactly.
He
didn't gain the power of waking. Yeah, that's fair.
That was the main reason why they went into the realm of sleep.
To get the power of waking.
Yeah, to get the power of waking.
Okay, wait.
Help avenge Terra and Aqua.
The power of waking is to the power of waking wakes sleeping hearts, and they want it to wake up the other trio.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Sorry, it's been a minute on Dream Drop. That's the main bit of the story, and then you basically find out that there's going to be like a battle between 13 darknesses and 7 lights, and Yensid is just like, okay, well, we got 6, so we need a 7th, and then last cutscene in the game, you see Riku bring in Kairi to be trained as the 7th light, and everyone pops off.
Yeah, that was a big pop off. Also, I want to touch real quick on what he said about the 13 darknesses. Xehanort, obviously, like he said earlier, young Xehanort has the ability to time travel, which allows him to. A very clarification about the time travel is that you cannot do it freely. You have to leave behind your body in order to do it. But once you have done it, you can bestow it upon a reflection yourself. So young Xehanort can freely time travel because he gave up his body in the future to just give him the power freely. So Ansem had no form for like over 80 years until he possessed Riku in Kingdom Hearts 1 to finally get a physical form, which is crazy to think about. But anyways, and that's exactly what he does. All he does is he brings the hearts over from the past, because only young Xehanort has the power to just freely move between time, and that gets touched more into 3. But yeah, all that to say, the 13 darknesses are all individuals that are either versions of Xehanort from the past or individuals that he put some of his heart into. One such member is Xigbar from the original organization, who we know who's been in cahoots with Xehanort since Birth by Sleep, willingly gives up part of his heart to Xehanort in order to become part of this true Organization 13.
And we now know of 4 different realms. We know the Datascape, we know the Dream World, Dream Realm or whatever, Realm of Light, and the Realm of Darkness. So there's
also the
realms.
Realm of In-Between.
And the In-Between world as well. So there's 5.
I also do want to give a real quick shout out to Dream Drop Distance as well, because at this point in the series, if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, you've been playing all the games to this point, there haven't been a lot of Kingdom Hearts games up to that point that have really given you just completely new worlds. And Dream Drop Distance, Nomura took special care to say, hey, this is the Realm of Dreams. These have to be new worlds because they're worlds that were stuck in the Realm of Sleep for a long time. So all the worlds you go to in Dream of Distance are new. They're not all necessarily new franchises to the series, but they're all new worlds. Like Quasimodo with the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the world that's completely new, never been touched before in the series. Then you also go to finally actually proper Pinocchio's world. You only went to Monstro before. The world from the grid from Tron Legacy, not the original Tron, which had been explored. And they even took the advantage to finally have you go into the world of Fantasia, as well as Mickey, Donald, and Goofy the Three Musketeers, which wasn't even a theatrical release. It was a video.
It really fucking opened up like the worlds to, you could include all sorts of different worlds from Disney history,
Right.
So it really opened that up.
Video release was interesting. Even before that, with Birth by Sleep, like obviously when you went to Stitch's world, which is D-Space, it's based on just like the first 5 minutes of Lilo and Stitch. But Sparky from Stitch the movie was in that world too.
Yep.
Which is also direct video release. I'm like, whoa, from Sparky? I'm like, okay.
So this is why we have the different. That explains rather why we have the different versions of Anthem and Xehanort rather in Kingdom Hearts 3.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Dream Drop Distance is the prologue to 3.
And then, so who are the 7?
Oh, the 7 light. What is light? So
yes.
One has to be Sora, of course, and then the other one is Riku. Then you have Mickey. They intend. Kairi, of course, makes 4, and then Axel, who now is in his real form as Lee, but they call him Axel anyway, so I'm going to keep calling him Axel. Was trained because they needed another member, so he's 5, and then they need to save Ven and Aqua to make 7. They don't count Terra just because they know that they have his body, so they're assuming that he's part of the 13 Darkness, which Kingdom Hearts 3
So at the end of Dream Drop Distance, how many do they actually have?
At the end,
they technically have 5 if you include Kairi.
Yes,
but
and neither is.
So they already had Axel at the end of Dream Drop.
So Axel, this is one thing that's like kind of like whatever, just roll with it. Axel just kind of just gets a Keyblade out of nowhere.
Okay,
yeah, not out of nowhere. Like he gets trained by Yensid like during the events of the Dream Drop. Like, they don't show it. But
his Keyblade, no, they show in Dream Drop Distance his Keyblade just like appears. And then
it's very strange.
It's just like, holy shit, you have a Keyblade? And I've really seen memes where it's just like, oh my god, Lee, have my babies. Like, when he sees Lee, bring the Keyblade to his hand or whatever. So at that point, it's technically 5, but only Riku is the only Keyblade master like that entire. Or in Mickey.
They don't have to technically be masters because Kairi
I know, but like basically like Lee and Kairi are trying to. They're still like Yensid's training them to become masters in 3. Like they are like yes, he's teaching them the ways of the Keyblade, but also like they do get tested in Kingdom Hearts 3 to become masters.
So the only master of the 5 so far is Riku, and then if we are to save Aqua, it would just be those 2.
And Mickey.
Oh, and Mickey. Oh, fuck, I forgot about Mickey. Okay. So next up, was that it for Dream Drop Distance?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just setting up the 13 Darknesses, the time trial aspect, and the fact that the Keyblade War is going to be recreated so they can recreate the Keyblade, where it's how it's spelled like the Chi Blade, to open the door to Kingdom Hearts, essentially, and restart. The whole point of Xehanort's motivation, which we haven't really touched on.
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah. But Xehanor's whole motivation is that he wants to, because Xehanort is curious about things. He's just like an extremely curious fellow. That's what eventually caused him to want to venture to other worlds besides his small home of Destiny Islands. And so he heard the tale that in the ancient days of Keyblade War, which we're going to touch on in a second when we get to the huge cross stuff, is that the ancient Keyblade War happened, and the world was once all one big world. Like all the worlds that were separated were once one big world, but then they all fell into darkness, and so children with their light rebuilt the worlds into what they are now, which is basically different worlds that are all separated now. So Xehanort wonders, hey, what if we just did this again? What if I just recreated the Keyblade War and just, destroyed all the worlds and they just got rebuilt again? What would happen? Would the worlds be better? Would they be more balanced? Because he feels that there's too much light in the realm. There's not enough darkness. They need to be balanced. So he thinks that's a legitimate problem. And Eric is even chastised, and everyone seems like, fool, you would risk apocalypse out of sheer curiosity? But yeah, that's what he wants to do, because he thinks there's too much light. It needs to be more of a balance. Otherwise, what are we doing? So that's why he does that.
Okay, but is that a bad thing? Balance in the world?
Balance is not a bad thing, but destroying everything that exists.
No, yeah, that part is probably
it's just the process of making it happen that is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, Xehanort's ideals aren't inherently wrong. It's his methods that are...
Yeah, exactly.
And Ericus is kind of in the wrong as well, because he feels like every person who is darkness is evil.
Yeah.
And that's what his downfall.
Mickey at one point believed that as well, because in Chain of Memory, at the very end of Chain of Memories, he travels with Riku, and Mickey even straight up tells Riku, "Is like, I thought that darkness was something that should never exist, but I've seen you, and it changed my mind. I want to see where that path leads."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that.
Mickey's character changes a little bit during Chain of Memories too. Like a lot of people assume that the Disney characters never change, but sometimes they do. The main ones do anyway.
So, does that bring us then to Kingdom Hearts Chi or Dark Road?
We can talk
Kingdom
on
Hearts 3.
Well, thing is that Chi, Unchained, Ununion Cross, that's an ongoing story. It technically started right after the Dream Drop Distance, but I do want to, when I talk about it, I do want to talk about some stuff that has since happened, like afterwards. So I think we should touch on 0.2 first.
Okay, I don't even know what 0.2 is, so please inform me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just Aqua. It's just taking place more with Aqua in the realm of darkness. The only two things that are worth mentioning is that like she runs into Mickey, and the whole thing of Mickey at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1 where he has the Keyblade, he's like, "Come on, Sora, let's close this door for good." Like that moment basically happens in 0.2. You just see it from the other side. And then you basically Aqua is still ends up being just like trapped in the realm of darkness, trying to fend off the darkness, like literally throughout, from Birth by Sleep to Kingdom Hearts 3. So she's been in the realm of darkness for like 12, yeah, like
11 actually.
Yeah, 11 to 12 years at this point. And then more of that is, you find out what happens to her in Kingdom Hearts 3.
Indeed. And also, the realm of darkness, time flows at a different rate because 10 years passed. Aqua's in the realm of darkness for 10 years. And she may feel like it's been that way, but physically it doesn't even seem that way because with 0.2, we have her like right there with the Castle of Dreams. That's the cool thing about 0.2. There's only 3 technically Disney worlds in there, but they're all like dark, corrupted versions of those Disney worlds, which you never get to see in any other Kingdom Hearts game. Like, you get to see the castle with like darkness behind it. You go into the realm of mirrors, and everything from like Snow White's world is just all twisted and distorted. And then you go to Sleeping Beauty's world, which is the Enchanted Dominion, and there's just thorns everywhere, and there's very little what's left of the actual world. It's just something that I don't think we're going to based on like story context, but I would love to see like these darker version of Disney World just because it's just different. Like, it didn't even feel like you're going to like the old world just because of how different they looked.
So speaking on, seeing her and time's passage not happening, how old are these characters?
Sora at the point of Kingdom Hearts 3 is probably 15.
He's actually, I think, 16 now after 16?
Okay. Well, I was talking about...
Yeah, he said at Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh, at this point, yeah, he's 15 at this point.
Yeah, 15. Riku's like a year or two older. I think Kairi's the same age as Sora.
Yeah.
And then Terra Aqua Ventus. I think Terra is on probably... Terra and Aqua are probably around the same age as Riku, and then Ventus is probably either the same age or a little bit younger than Sora.
I think the official age is 16 for Ventus, but I might be wrong.
It may be. Well, he may look 16, but when we get to the T version, there's some stuff I need to talk about there with Ventus. Okay, I'll go into the Kingdom Hearts Chi stuff now. So there was a browser game that was called Kingdom Hearts Chi. That's pretty much not really canon anymore because they kind of retconned it with the Unchained Key version, which replaced it essentially. Parts of that story are also told in a movie that's available on the 2.8 collection called Back Cover. Though that focuses specifically on this group of characters called the Foretellers, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the stories continue with the current version, Union Cross. So, Unchained Key. This is hundreds of years before Kingdom Hearts 1, because now we're dealing with the era before the worlds fell to darkness, before the Keyblade War. Like, everything was just fine. It was an era where children were basically were Keyblade wielders, and everything was pretty peaceful. They were ruled by these 5 groups called the Foretellers, which are like ancient Keyblade masters, which are in turn ruled by this figure called the Master of Masters, who oversaw them. And there's also a 6th character called Lushu as well. Essentially, they have the Book of Prophecies, which Maleficent first mentioned back in Coded, as Chris mentioned earlier. Excuse me. So yeah, the Book of Prophecies foretold that eventually there would become a Keyblade War where the world would just fall to darkness. The Foretellers don't want that to happen. So they came up with the idea, what if we could gather light? If we gather enough light, then the darkness surely can't win and destroy the Keyblade, the Keyblade wielders and the worlds, right? So they get into their heads to use the Book of Prophecies to create illusions of Heartless, creatures that of course would not exist until hundreds of years later. Because if you destroy darkness, you produce light, right? That's how it works? So that's what they did. So they started putting all the Keyblade wielders through like illusion Disney worlds, so they can go through their own storyline, basically, fight Heartless, gather light, and prevent the Keyblade War from happening. But, just as Kairi's grandmother had said in like some of the other games, because there was too much light out there, they started coveting it, and they started suspecting each other. and eventually darkness would start invading the hearts of the wielders. And eventually the foretellers themselves started to get jealous of each other, and there was infighting between them. Eventually, all their methods to try to stop everything from happening was undone because they all started clashing against each other, and a Keyblade War eventually did happen. That was actually the ending of the browser game. It's a very sad scene because all these Keyblade Wars who were once friends, including your player character, are partaking in this war to fight each other for the light, and it basically brings the world to destruction, essentially. And through all of this, the six apprentice of the master, who's not doesn't have his own union, Lushu, is just watching the whole thing because the master of masters had tasked him nope, don't do anything, just watch it happen. It's gonna happen. I just need you to watch it. So he has this Keyblade that would later on go on a Xehanort that has his eye attached to it. Apparently, as long as his eye sees the events, it will be recorded in the Book of Prophecies. So Lushu's job was just to watch. Don't interfere, just watch. So he just let the Keyblade War happen, and it brought ruin. The foretellers all disappeared to who knows where. But one of the union leaders was a woman named Ava. She was given a role by the master to find wielders to not participate in the war and help rebuild the world when it would be destroyed. They were called the Dandelions. And 5 of those people were called the Dandelion leaders, and they would basically take over when everything happened. And that's what eventually leads to the game's revision, which was Union Cross. The Keyblade War happens. The survivors of the Dandelions, their memories were erased. They don't know the Keyblade War happens. They knew it was going to happen, but as far as their memories are concerned, it never did. So wasn't the Keyblade War supposed to happen next week? Oh, I guess it never happened. Oh, that's cool. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. In reality, they all got transported into a data world, and by gathering there, they could help rebuild the world so they could be what they once were. And in the end, 5 new kids from the Dandelions were chosen to be the new union leaders. One of them was a boy named Ephemer, who was kind of close to Ava. Another one was a girl named Scold, who was close to Ephemer. The third union leader was Ventus, who apparently lived in this time. And I remember seeing that scene. I was like, what? Ven? What? Yeah, Ven lived this time. How he eventually came to the present Kingdom Hearts series is still unknown at this point. The story is still ongoing. But Ven was one of the 3 union leaders. The 4th one was a new character called Brain, who's has a fedora-like hat with a feather on top. And he's, like his name implies, is the brains of the operation. He's the one that's questioning everything and wants to help build a better world. His exact motivation unknown, but he seems to be on the up and up for now. And the 5th one, the 5th union leader, is a man named Laurium, who is the original somebody of Marluxia, a member of the organization. So apparently he also existed in this era as an ancient Keyblade wielder. And he was also good friends with a woman named Elrena, who is the original form of Larxene. So there are just some some organization members who had just existed back hundreds of years ago when all this happening. How they got from there to the present is still unknown at the moment. But they are the 5 union leaders. And there's a darkness that's trying to encroach upon the world as they're trying to rebuild it. Where that's going to lead to is still unknown at the moment because, again, the story is still ongoing. But there is a darkness that is trying to undo all their work to basically help rebuild the world. Maleficent is also here for some reason because apparently after her defeat in Kingdom Hearts 1, she too learned the time travel technique that young Xehanort employed to go back in time and try to change her destiny. But guess what? She failed. She couldn't do it. So now she's just trying to get back to her own time, which I guess she eventually did because that's how she ended up coming back in Kingdom Hearts 2. But that is what's going on right now as far as Union Cross. The 5 unions are desperately trying to rebuild the world, but there's a darkness identity is currently unknown that is trying to stop them from rebuilding.
So the most important thing that I know from this is that the Master of Masters disappears.
Correct. He knows about everything that was to come, and he's apparently going to be appearing more often in the future as well because he knew what was happening and gave all the union leaders, the original union, the foretellers, different missions that seemed to conflict with each other in some regard. Ultimately, which led to the Keyblade War happening, even though there are desperate attempts to try to make it not happen.
Yes, and we don't know who he is, and he leaves the mysterious black box with Lushu, correct?
That is correct.
Which I bring up because that goes into Kingdom Hearts 3 as one of those things that I believe is still unsolved.
Yes, it is. Unsolved.
So let's move on to Kingdom Hearts 3.
Let's do it!
The 2019 game, which I still can't believe came out in 2019. I feel like it was older for some reason. But the game that came out... It has been a very long year, you're right. The game that came out last year was pretty much the Keyblade wielders, the 7, preparing to go against the reconstructed Organization 13 with Master Xehanort's return. Right. Obviously, we got to see new worlds, but I mean, you guys can tell me all the important stuff from KH3 that happened with the ending of this Xehanort saga.
Yeah, so Kingdom Hearts 3 is, Sora is tasked by Master Yensid to get the power of Waking after he failed to do so during the Mark of Mastery exam. So that's what him and Donald and Goofy are doing. And then at the same time, Riku and Mickey are going to the Realm of Darkness to try and save Aqua. So that's kind of like what the two teams are doing, while Axel and Kairi are training to become Keyblade wielders. So this, and Kingdom Hearts 3 is such a... I have so much mixed feelings about this game. So basically, in Kingdom Hearts 3, Sora is going to new world, basically all new worlds, outside of like pirates, I think, and to try and find this power. And as he's going through each world, there's one of the members of the new Organization 13 that are basically there to make an appearance, give him shit, and dip out. You go to the different worlds, and then Riku and Mickey are, when they're fighting in the Realm of Darkness, still looking for Aqua. Basically, the power of darkness has been increasing, making more difficult, heartless foes to fight, and the worst story decision made in the game. Riku's Keyblade breaks, and he has to get him and Mickey have to get upgraded Keyblades from Yen Sid. So they leave to come back, and Riku leaves his broken Way to the Dawn in the Realm of Darkness.
Why is that such a bad storytelling decision to you?
Because his Keyblade was literally an evolution of his previous weapon, and it was he is the one outside of Terra Aqua and Ventus where they don't really, it's not really confirmed per se, but Riku's Keyblade was the first Keyblade that we saw actually evolve, when it wasn't originally a Keyblade. Because originally he had, is it called Darkseid? Is that, what was his original? What was his original weapon called? It wasn't a Keyblade though. Soul Eater, yeah, Soul Eater. And Soul Eater evolved into Way to the Dawn, where it got the wing, and the more angelic handle. And that also is just a very big representation of Riku's character development throughout the series.
I see.
So it's kind of just I don't know. It's kind of like a middle finger to me.
Yeah.
And then and even worse, his new replacement is the most generic looking thing I've ever seen.
No.
It looks like a Bustasaurus car. It's a literal car key. It's a car key. Yeah,
it does look pretty bad. Yeah,
which Fenrir did first, but I thought Fenrir had a cooler design.
So yeah, and then they end up going back to try and find. They also go in Radiant Garden to try and find clues and things like that as well. And then eventually it gets to the point where Sora, even though he doesn't have the power of waking, he goes to try and help save Aqua when Riku, right in the middle of the time when Riku is fighting Aqua, as you find out that she has been basically what's corrupted by the darkness after being in the realm of darkness for so long. She's been overwhelmed by it, and she's basically now known as like Dark Aqua. And as Riku is fighting Aqua, Sora steps in, even though he really had no reason to, and Sora ends up saving Aqua and restoring her to normal. Following that, Aqua. Oh, something really important to mention in Birth by Sleep. Once Aqua gets Master Ericus's Keyblade, she ends up locking the Land of Departure, which turns into Castle Oblivion.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to Castle Oblivion, and Aqua unlocks Castle Oblivion, and it turns into the Land of Departure again, where Ventus's body has been sleeping the entire time. And then Vanitas shows up, and you get to play as Aqua, and you fight against Vanitas. And then during that time, Aqua is about to get defeated, but then Sora basically ends up getting the power of waking during that moment, and wakes Ventus up, and Ventus comes in to help save Aqua from Vanitas. So now all 7 lights have been made, and they end up starting to head to the Keyblade Graveyard. Is there anything important that I've missed so far?
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I might be wrong, but didn't the organization go to Castle Oblivion in an attempt to find Ventus in a way?
That was the plot. That was basically the premise of Chain of Memories. Their whole reason for going there was to find Ventus, because Zemnis. Well, it's not Ventus specifically, but a room called the Chamber of Awakening, which Zemnis knew what was in there, but their organization did not, and he did not tell them. He just said, just find the Chamber of Awakening, which they never did, because only Aqua has the ability to get there, because she's the one that created Castle Oblivion, essentially.
Right.
Yes.
But no, I think that's it. I feel your frustration now for some of the things that you're explaining, so I can't wait to talk about it. But
we'll talk about it more after, because I feel like Kingdom Hearts 3 definitely is really divisive in a sense. But yeah, so they all show up at the Keyblade Graveyard, and you find out, just kind of in a one-liner later on, that Axel and Kairi did not pass their Mark of Mastery tests, but they're still there rocking it, and I believe also there was there's a point where they are trying to I forgot Zexian's somebody's name. Ienzo, yes. Ienzo is helping Sora and the gang try and bring back Roxas and Naminé using the replica type process that Vexen used to create Riku Replica. In Chain of Memories, yes. So yes, they end up at the Keyblade Graveyard. They fight. You do another similar thing to the 1,000 Heartless battle in Kingdom Hearts 2, just a little less cool, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Just because of the whole stupid ride attraction system. Fuck, I hate that. I hate that so much. It makes no sense.
It was cool in concept, but didn't work in execution.
Oh my god, I feel like the only person who loved it.
I enjoyed it. I think they just triggered too much.
It's cool for a turn your brain off fun type thing, but for those that are when Kingdom Hearts 2 was literally perfect, and then you add things to not make it perfect anymore.
I see.
It's just one of those things.
It's just I missed reaction commands so much. And I wish those replaced the traction flow.
Exactly, I agree completely.
Yeah.
So they show up, and then basically a giant fucking heartless tornado is coming in, and fucks everybody up.
They all die.
Sora has this huge breakdown where everyone's gone. Like, we failed. I failed. Like, blah 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 blah. Like, there's no hope left. And then Riku coming in, showing me why he's my favorite character. He's like, you don't fucking believe that. Like, we can still do this. Like, and he goes in to fight that fucking tornado by himself. Like, the badass he is, even though he fails, it's even cooler, that, in my opinion. And basically, everyone kind of dies. And then you're teleported to this, like, this is like the realm of in-between, right?
It's the final world. Yeah, it's
the final world.
Basically, like,
we're
purgatory in a way.
Chirithy.
Mm-hmm.
And, who's from, like, kind of from Union Cross and or Unchained Key at the time. And you basically have to restore your heart so you can go back in time a little bit and do things differently. And at that, so basically you go through all that. You're tell Chirithy, like, we're friends now, like, things like that. Sora being Sora.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back, and it resets to the point where you're about to, because Terranort. So before the tornado shows up, Terranort shows up and tries to be a cocky asshole and stuff like that, but this time around, Terra shows up, lingering will form, and fights Terranort off, and then when it comes to this giant Heartless tornado, you're saved by, or you're not saved particularly, but you gain the power of, like, fucking a million Keyblade wielders of light.
That's cool.
I forgot the kid's name.
Ephema.
Ephema.
Yes.
You kind of, like, have a little exchange, like, like, is it verbal? I'm pretty sure it's non-verbal, like a non-verbal exchange with him, and then you just, like, have the power to like, from all of the previous Keyblade wielders, like, lost souls of sorts, to take out this giant Heartless tornado. And it's really cool because, like, Tetsuya Nomura, like, had actual usernames from players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm so mad that I didn't make it in. I applied to that contest too because I do play Union Cross, but I was like, I didn't make it.
I do have a friend that I know that made it in.
Oh, yeah. So I'm jealous.
For me, I didn't care. Cool. I was like, that's really cool.
Really
cool that he did that, but I, like, so you do that, and then also Yen Sid comes in out of nowhere and just like actually does shit. Fucking Moses Park. Moses, and just, like, splits the heart into a path so that everyone can move forward. And then, like, basically, as Sora, you go to different sections of this giant labyrinth and team up with different people to defeat, a number of Xehanorts, the Organization 13. Probably the two significant ones is when you team up with Aqua and Terra to take out Terranort and Vanitas, and then Terra ends up getting restored to his original self. That was a really emotional moment. And then as well as when you team up with Axel and Kairi to take on a hooded figure with a Keyblade similar to Sora's. And who was the other one? Saix.
Yeah.
And then Roxas comes in out of nowhere, and you all fight. And then Xion. You find out, obviously, it's Xion. Anyone who played any game previously to 3 knows it's Xion. And basically, the Sea Salt Trio are back together again. And that was
super emotional too.
Super emotional.
When they finally figured out who Xion was.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, absolutely.
But here's my main criticism. One of my main criticisms of Kingdom Hearts 3 is that almost all of this was spoiled by the pre-marketing stuff.
Yeah,
and it was hard to avoid in the Kingdom Hearts community.
Square Enix for you.
Because everyone was posting GIFs, and I tried to mute everything Kingdom Hearts related, and I still bloody saw it. So I was really frustrated with Square Enix for doing that. I hope they don't again.
I didn't get spoiled by that, but I definitely heard things like, "Oh, people have copies now; it's out in the wild."
I knew Roxas was going to be back. So.
Well, yeah, it was one of those things like, okay, it's going to happen, but how is it going to happen?
Yeah,
that's where I was at with everything.
But they literally had a trailer for this section of the game at the end of the game. You don't do that. It's so stupid.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so that's those were fights that happened. You team up with Riku to take out Riku Replica and Zigbar, and then you team up with Mickey to take out Marluxia and Larxene. And then when you get to the final
quick question.
Area, yeah, go ahead.
When you take out Larxene, she says something. The game never explains what she means.
I think it's a connection to Union Cross.
Same thing for Marluxia. When he got defeated, he mentions that he's finally on the cusp of recovering who he truly is.
Yeah,
it's something that's not clear yet, but Union Cross is clearly.
It's one of those things. I don't really keep up to the story with Union Cross because I think it's kind of ridiculous, even for Kingdom Hearts.
No, we've gone through a lot of shit. We've gone through so many different portable devices and different games, and it's got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to play a repetitive mobile RPG to get the story. It's just, and I don't want to watch 3 hours of text-based cutscenes. No, thank you.
It's not particularly bad. I have played a decent amount, but with the amount of content that it's been added since it released, I'm never going to take the time to actually catch up. So
I do like Wreck-It Ralph's World, though, I'll say that.
Yeah, there's too many levels between cutscenes, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's passed out way too much.
I don't think it's particularly not fun as a mobile game, but I just don't really like mobile games in general. So that's just me. But again, it's the one mobile game I have downloaded on my phone.
It's not a fun Kingdom Hearts game. It might be a fun mobile game, but it's not a fun Kingdom Hearts game.
I think the medals are cool. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Chain of Memories. I don't know. I like it, but I just don't like it enough to keep playing it. So.
I have something to ask you guys. How do the medals work with the canon? Because it really doesn't make sense for me.
Oh, yeah, they explained that. So basically, to fight with the Book of Prophecies, they make the illusions of the Heartless as well as the illusions of the worlds. The medals basically are every, I guess, Disney character from the modern series as well as some other ones that are just not, haven't been represented yet in the Kingdom Hearts series, maybe Moana or something like that. They're in the Book of Prophecies, and to give the Keyblade wielders the power to fight back against the darkness that they need to get the light, they take entries from the Book of Prophecies and convert them into medals, and the Keyblade wielder uses the medal to give themselves an ability associated with the medal that they are given. So it just, because the Keyblade wielders, there's so many of them that they can't all be properly trained, so the medals is kind of like a cheat to give them abilities that they wouldn't ordinarily have, so they can fight the darkness and win. Which is why there's boss fights against the foretellers themselves, and no matter how much you're beasting on them with your powerful medals that you grinded for, they whoop your ass after the cutscenes begins, because the foretellers actually know how to fight, and you're just borrowing powers from the future, basically.
Right. Thanks for the context.
Yeah. It's the same concept with the cards in Dark Road, but I'll get there.
Yeah. But yeah, so then after that, Sora fights all the other Xehanorts, basically. So Ansem, Xemnas, and young Xehanorts. And then following that, you fight Xehanort himself. And I think this fight was really cool. I liked how it ended with Trinity. That was really, really cool.
I agree.
Because I think that the ongoing theme about how Sora like isn't a whole without Donald and Goofy is really powerful,
yes. Mm-hmm.
And
pints.
Yeah, and it fits the themes of Kingdom Hearts of like friendship and like how friends are your power and things like that. So that I really liked that bit for sure. Yeah, so you defeat Xehanort, and then and then Master Ericus appears, and you find out that basically what was it? Xehanort Ericus appears it's because he left like a part of himself
in Terra, I believe.
In Terra, yeah.
You sly dog. You sly fox.
Yeah, you sly fox, yeah. And you basically kind of way too stereotypical anime stereotype. Basically, Ericus and Xehanort leave life together, saying that like, hey, maybe we should just like leave this in the hands of like current, of people now, like
next
you know,
generation,
like the new generation of people, like we've had our time, like that type of thing, and he's just like, yeah, he's like kind of just like accepted that and kind of goes off that way. And then in the Remind DLC, you basically, oh god, I only played it once, so I'm a little foggy on it.
I think I can help out with this part.
Yeah.
So if Remind basically, it's split into 3 parts. It's split into the actual Remind episode, the Limit Cut episode, and the Secret episode. Remind basically, it's basically a side story to the climax, because after everything was said and done, Kairi was disappeared, like killed. Sora had already saved everybody using the power of waking, but obviously after defeating Xehanort, it's not a perfect ending because Kairi is still gone. So he decides to use the power of waking again to redo one more of the aspects of like what happened in the past, so that he can reconstruct Kairi basically. Chirithy even warns Sora though that if he does this, like he already misused the power of waking, so he's already in danger. But Sora's going to do it because he ain't leaving without Kairi. That's just not going to happen. So by using the power of waking again, incorrectly as Chirithy points out, he once again returns to the past and basically not only relives aspects that he has already done, but even goes to parts of the past that we have never seen before. We see Sora, we get to see the ending of the fight between the Lingering Well and Terra Xehanort, because Lingering Well just doesn't win, so Sora has to basically push Terra Xehanort away so he doesn't keep pursuing them. We also see that while Sora, Donald, and Goofy were having their final fight against Xehanort, that the remaining wielders of light, the Guardians of Light, were fighting against the Xehanort clones that he had created,
so cool.
and losing. So Sora had to give them a little bit of help. We get this awesome scene where the wielders are like defeated, and Mickey is wounded and just like slowly walks forward to stop them.
Oh, so fucking good. This is what I wanted in the base game, dog.
Yeah.
This is like, I think these were like the major things that people were like really pissed off about. Like, we didn't get these type of moments in the actual base game.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh my fucking god! Like, and then bringing back reaction commands, and not even bringing back reaction commands, but like the little details in the reaction commands, like the Terra and Riku team up was called Successor. Like, let's fucking go! Yes. Let's fucking go! And it's just like, and then Ben and Roxas, like, what's your name again? Roxas? He's like, you're pretty good at this. He's like, yeah, well, you're not too bad yourself. I'm like, go! This is what I waited for.
It's such fan service. You even get an Axel Aqua moment, which no one was asking for, but we got it anyway.
I know. It was literally Avengers Endgame. Like, it was earned service. It was earned fan service for fucking 15 years of waiting for fucking shit, man.
Finally came together and kicked ass. Yes, this guy.
Yeah, but anyway,
so good.
Considering all that, so you do all that part. So Sora basically works with the wielders of the Guardians of Light to defeat the Xehanort clones. And after going through all this, Sora is eventually finally able to recreate Kairi. But before he can do that, the one final Xehanort clone comes back and basically fights them. And at that point, this is something we've mentioned in part 1, but this is when you get to finally control Kairi, fight alongside Sora, and just show what an absolute badass Kairi is.
She's awesome.
she's such a good player. Because, I mean, you technically could play as Sora, but why would you? This is your moment. Why would you not play as Kairi in this moment? Like, the only reason you would play as Sora is just to make the fight easier. But why would you want it to be easier? This is the final fight of like the story remind. So
that limit. Oh my god!
The limit.
Thing together.
That was gorgeous.
Oh my god!
Gorgeous.
It's so cute.
And so together, Sora and Kairi are able to defeat Xehanort once and for all. They're recompleted, and then you get the final scene of the game again, but now with new context, because now Sora and Kairi were basically going through all these different moments as the characters were reuniting. With the new context, it's so much wonderful. It's so wonderful. But that does bring us to the ending of both 3 and the Remind episode, in which, everybody's reunited. It seems like a perfect ending. Sora and Kairi are reunited, but Sora disappears because he misused the power of waking, and no one knows where he is. But that does lead us into the second episode of Remind, which is called Limit Cut, which takes place an entire year after Kingdom Hearts 3. Everybody is trying to find Sora. They can't move on without him, understandably so. So everybody's trying to do their own part to figure out where he is. Terraven and Aqua go back.
Is that where Terraven and Aqua are going?
Yeah, they're going to the realm of darkness to see if they can find Sora. And Riku even goes to Aqua. Is like, are you sure about this? You've been there for a long time. Aqua says, "It's okay. I'm not alone this time," which I think is so cute.
I guess I just didn't connect that they were looking for that everyone was looking for Sora. So that
everyone, yes.
Birth by Sleep Volume 2, baby.
Yeah. Ooh, that could be a thing.
No, that's not going to happen.
You don't think so?
No. I think so. We'll get to it later, but I think that this next mainline game is going to be, which they said it should come out in 2022 or whatever, or 2021, maybe, is going to be like some aspect of a Dream Drop 2, where it's going to be Sora and Riku.
Okay, I can see that.
So you don't think there's going to be like another side story with Ben, Terra, and Aqua? Because they're really popular.
Right now, I just don't see anything that would justify it.
Okay, I can see your point, yeah.
But anyway, finish the up. So everyone is doing their own thing to find Sora. He goes back to Radiant Garden, finally get the Final Fantasy representation because they're all there at the Radiant Garden, and Riku is trying to find evidence. They find a computer program, and I have never seen them provide storyline justification for fighting super bosses, but they do it here. Because they realize that if they can go into this data, they can finally find a clue to where Sora might be. But the data is being blocked by all the data versions of the 13 darknesses you have to fight in the main game. And you have to make a data version of Sora to fight all of them in one-on-one fights, and they're all like super hard. Like they're great though. They're very hard, but they're also fair. They're like great boss fights. But yeah, after the data sword defeats all 13 of the super bosses, you finally get the information. You finally get a clue from the fairy godmother, and that brings us to the secret episode. Very short, but Sora meets a character called Yozora, which was
voiced by the man himself, Dylan Sprouse.
Yes, sir.
But also, I want to give a quick shout out to Yozora though, because traditionally in Kingdom Hearts super bosses that are tied to a future game, like Xemnas, like the Lingering Will, like young Xehanort, they have something to like hide them, like a hood or an armor helmet or something like that. So you're fighting the secret boss, but you have no idea who they are. For Yozora, they're finally like, look, you may not know his deal, but it's Yozora. You're fighting Yozora. You know he's going to be a important character, and he's actually voiced by a person that can be credited in the credits. It's great. Yeah. I'm happy that we don't know his full deal, but at least we know who the character is that we're fighting against.
Just to clarify, Yozora is a video game character that was introduced in the Toy Story world in Kingdom Hearts 3, Barum Rex.
Yep.
So just to keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
And because Rex mistakes Sora as Yozora
during that world. Which is really crazy, and it makes me wonder where they're going to go with it. I think Union Cross might lead into it all because they're currently in a Data world, and they're currently in Wreck-It Ralph's world in the Union Cross story, so they're already in a world of a video game. So I'm just saying there's something that happened there. But anyway,
I'm also going to mention this as well from the Toy Story world. I think young Xehanort introduced the concept of parallel worlds, or something like that, where so Woody and Buzz and everything, everyone were placed in a different world to the one from the movies.
Where Jesse and the rest are.
Yeah. So I don't know what exactly is going on with that. It's a copy of the world. So, do you know any more? Like, do you have any more context on that, just to make me understand what's going on with that?
The parallel worlds, unfortunately, not just yet. All we know is that like the closest approximation we have to parallel worlds are just like the worlds and maybe a data version of said world, because that is what's currently going on in Union Cross. Because to continue going through the Disney worlds in Union Cross, because of course they don't really exist yet because they've been broken, you have to go to a data recreation based on the Book of Prophecies. That's the closest we have right now. But as far as like straight up parallel worlds that are just like the same but different, no, at the moment we do not. At the moment.
Well, the coolest thing I will say with Yozora, what's his name?
Yozora.
Okay, the coolest thing that happened to him was when I finished the game. Is when did you guys play Final Fantasy 15?
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't finished it, but I have.
To me, the coolest thing was hearing the theme of FF15 go into Dearly Beloved. I was like, oh my god, what does this all mean? Like, what is happening?
Well, I can explain that for you.
Please do!
So, after Kingdom Hearts 2, Tetsuya Nomura was going to make a game called Final Fantasy Versus 13, which ended up being Final Fantasy 15, because he was too busy to worry about working on that game, because he was working on the Kingdom Hearts franchise, and then later Final Fantasy 7 remake after that, and basically he was just like, you know, his vision of what he wanted that game to be was not going to be what Final Fantasy 15 ended up being. So he was like, I'm just going to put Final Fantasy Versus 13's original concept into Kingdom Hearts 3 now. Or into Kingdom Hearts now.
And so, fascinating, because if you beat Yozora, right, you see this cutscene where he's in the same car, in the same kind of camera angle.
Trailer.
And the interesting thing is that the somebody of Luxord is driving the car.
He's driving the car, so maybe he comes from that world.
And there's something else we forgot to mention as well, as Luxord gave Sora a trump card. What was it?
It was a trump card. Like, we don't know what the card was, but he says, it could come in handy in the future,
and
something like that.
Once again, I'm thinking Chain of Memories could be important again, because cards can represent worlds, right?
Yes. Yep.
So I'm thinking, is there a connection there? Where
that'd be so good.
Right?
So good.
I don't know.
Because also the trailer is very reminiscent of the announcement trailer of Final Fantasy Versus 13. Like, if you watch like a side by side of that scene in Kingdom Hearts 3 and then like the announcement trailer of Final Fantasy Versus 13, it's very similar. Like the way it's shot and like, you know, all that jazz. You know, and Yozora is designed very similarly to Noctis. That is not a coincidence.
Very much not a coincidence.
So yeah. So basically, what we know now is that Yozora has like his own world, and you know, there is a possibility that we could be getting a game focused around Yozora, or that Yozora might be the main antagonist for the next saga. But I am thinking more of the former. I think he might get his own game. That will have some sort of connection to Kingdom Hearts somewhere down the line. And then the secret, not the secret ending per se, but the ending for Kingdom Hearts 3 is you basically find Sora and Riku in what looks to be some sort of like Shibuya, Tokyo, city.
Which, I could be wrong, but I am playing Through the World Ends With You right now, and it is literally the same area.
Yes, and they teased that in Dream Drop Distance because Sora said to Neku that he'd see him again.
In Shibuya.
You know, so that kind of in Shibuya.
Neku said that to Sora. See you in Shibuya.
Yeah, so I think that's going to happen, and I agree, Cameron, that there's going to be a Dream Drop Distance 2 in a way where you're switching between Sora and Riku. But I think once you beat that campaign, it could be like Chain of Memories, where there's a third campaign with Yozora.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
That would make a lot of sense to me too. Yeah. So that's basically all of Kingdom Hearts 3, and again, I would like to discuss this game a little bit just because the most recent entry, and it is definitely a divisive one. So I just want to say that I think this game is great. I still think this game is. It just, I think for a lot of things, both story and gameplay wise, it's just more of a step backwards than a step forward. Because the thing is that I don't want to get too technical about things, but basically, Kingdom Hearts 3 was made by the team that made Birth by Sleep. The team that made Kingdom Hearts 2
team,
does not really exist anymore. So that's a big reason as to why the gameplay is a lot more floaty than the groundedness that Kingdom Hearts 2 had. That good balance between aerial and grounded combat. And so that's a big factor to play with why the combat is the way it is in Kingdom Hearts 3.
I think it's vastly improved in Remind. I think they did a lot of tweaks and adjustments that made it feel closer to KH2, but it could still be a bit closer.
Yeah, and I think that all again, just the not having reaction commands, which I really hope.
Yeah,
because I've been seeing some interviews from Nomura recently, and I think he realizes a lot of the feedback that people didn't like about Kingdom Hearts 3. Those will be implemented in the next mainline entry. Because Melody Memories, a rhythm game, it's not going to have the same type of combat. And yeah, so that makes me excited. And something that we did bring up, that was brought up just for a second, I think it was on the previous episode of the podcast, is that Nomura had very little freedom with the Disney characters this time around.
Yeah. Yes.
He had there had to be deals made. There had to be there were some things that he just got straight up rejected on. He just did not have the freedom that he did originally. Because originally, which I wanted to bring up, give a good reason to bring it up at some point, and now is a perfect reason to bring it up. So when Kingdom Hearts was originally in development, the original Kingdom Hearts, Tetsuya Nomura went to I think it was LA or something like that to talk to the executives about, what they wanted to do for the game. And basically Disney had a bunch of different plans laid out on the table, a bunch of different game ideas. And basically Tetsuya Nomura just said no to all of them. He's like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's how it's going to go. And then they were like, okay, sure.
And I think he developed the game without even their approval at first. Which was interesting.
I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't be surprised. But basically, I think that, because I think, who was it? Was it Michael Eisner at the time was the CEO of Disney? And Michael Eisner was a lot more open to just kind of them doing whatever they wanted with their Disney licenses.
He gets hated on a lot, but he's a hero for this.
But yeah. But when with Bob Iger taking the role of CEO during the time, Tetsuya Nomura wanted Elsa to be a boss battle in the Frozen world, and wanted to her to show the more anti-hero of things, and then she did end up turning good after Sora fighting her, but Disney did not want that to happen. They wanted her to still be seen as a good character across the board and things like that. Which is weird, because that's kind of the point of Frozen's movie is she wasn't good all the time.
Yeah.
Which is really weird to me. So that's why
I think it makes sense.
Frozen feels rather disjointed, where you're climbing the mountain for half of the world, and then the other half is it's the Frozen characters, but it's nowhere integrated into what the Frozen movie actually is. And then the prince, or the prince dude, I forgot his name, you don't even really interact with him, and then he turns into a Heartless, and it's just it feels really weird in that sense.
It felt super weird like that with the Pirates world too.
Yeah,
where, it was all just jointed.
Yeah, that was something that Tetsuya Nomura said in the interviews, oh, why are we doing At World's End instead of Dead Man's Chest this time around? And basically he was just well, At World's End is my favorite movie, and we thought it made more sense because yada yada yada. And I was some of it I get, but I do think Caribbean is still a really fun world. And it like the art style in it is fantastic. Like absolutely. I don't think that's one thing. Like I think when it came to last year, like when it came to the Game Awards stuff, like I think their art direction like got fucking gypped. Like each world had to have its own unique art design. You know what I mean? Like it's really impressive. But yeah, and like I think I'm pretty sure to get like Toy Story they had to also add in Monsters Inc. and things like that. Like there's just so many things that they didn't have the freedom for compared to previous mainline entries to the series that like hopefully like Disney becomes a little bit more open-minded moving forward. And I think that like once Tetsuya Nomura realized how restrained he was, that's when he like thought of more of the idea of like, oh, let's put the Final Fantasy versus 13 stuff into Kingdom Hearts. Like let's try and like not rely as much on the Disney stuff because the freedoms that he's trying to get, like he's not getting. So like, and there are some people that are just like, oh, we should just cut out Disney completely now and it should be its own thing. I'm like, no. That's not Kingdom Hearts then anymore. If there's no Disney, like
that's how I felt when there was no Final Fantasy in it. Because to me, it's a mixture of both.
Yeah, and he also said in an interview regarding that one that they just didn't have the time. They had to cut it. Mm-hmm. It was going to be in the game, but they cut it.
Something else they needed to change was with the Pixar worlds because I think they originally were just going to follow the story. But one of the implications was that they had to create new original stories within those Pixar worlds to have them fit.
I actually do like of the Pixar worlds.
I do too. Yeah.
Now I don't like the fact that I never got to fight Zurg or Randall. But that being aside, I did like the fact that they had stories. But and Monsters Inc. I particularly like that because it gave us something that a lot of Monsters Inc. fans finally wanted, which was a sequel to that movie to see what happens afterwards.
One thing I will say about the Disney thing is that I to me, it kind of makes sense not having so many liberties just because Kingdom Hearts has grown, I think, to be such a huge franchise that, putting something like Frozen in Kingdom Hearts, and I'm not saying I agree with it, I'm just saying it makes sense to me, because putting something like Frozen in Kingdom Hearts with, how Frozen was everywhere, and how big that movie was, and how many, kids were obsessed with it, if you have, if I'm the head of Disney and I'm thinking, essentially, I don't know, how big this audience is going to be, but if I have kids that are going to play Kingdom Hearts 3 because they know that, Frozen's in it, the last thing I want them to do is fight Elsa after watching the movie. So for me, that kind of makes sense for like as a business practice for this series becoming so big, because I even have friends who are just playing it just because of the Disney aspect, but that doesn't mean I agree with it. I actually agree with everything you said, Cameron. I wish that I think that was the point of Frozen, and I wish that it could have gone that way. I feel like it would have been much more interesting, and I do feel like some of this was a letdown essentially. But I do want to ask Chris now, how did you feel about Kingdom Hearts 3?
So first thing I want to bring up actually is that I think it would have been better if Maleficent got involved in the Eternal World and like tried to convince Elsa, to go on the darker side, But overall, Kingdom Hearts 3, I loved it personally. But the negative fan backlash kind of like soured my opinion a bit, and then once I've replayed the game and played Remind, I was like, okay, yeah, I do love this game. Yeah, I just the worlds look incredible, especially the Hercules world and the Tangled worlds. Just like they're so colorful, bright, beautiful. But to me, I think it started to falter towards the second half. Because personally, I didn't like the Caribbean world that much, and I didn't like Big Hero 6 that much. Just because the stories of those worlds kind of felt rushed in a way.
Mm-hmm. Big Hero 6, I agree with you. This definitely felt rushed.
Yeah, I just didn't dig the Caribbean world just because, one, the music was awful for that world. And
Jerel,
hard degrees.
Oh my gosh, it was so good! What are you talking about?
I don't know. It just drove me nuts. It absolutely drove me nuts with those that happy-go-lucky music in a serious kind of world like the Caribbean, and they didn't even use.
Pirates Caribbean is totally goofy. What are you talking about?
What?
Pirates Caribbean is totally goofy.
I guess it can be.
The battle theme was amazing, though. Come on.
It wasn't.
Oh my God, Chris!
It should have been He's a Pirate, or an alternate version of that. I don't know, because that just works in the Pirates of the Caribbean world.
It's weird that He's a Pirate wasn't anywhere. I'll agree with that much.
Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of felt unfinished to me. But overall, I loved the game, but yeah, the marketing itself as well kind of spoiled the end world for me.
Yeah. There was a point in the advertisement. No, there was a point when I was playing the game. I don't remember what it was, but I remember messaging friends and being like, if I didn't know that this would have happened, if I didn't know this was happening, I would have been so much more emotionally invested.
Yeah, I would have been freaking
out. Of course, exactly.
But
But I had already seen, what I don't remember what it was. I think it was probably Aqua turning to darkness. And I was like, well, had I not seen this moment before, it would have been so huge to just, have played through it blind. So I completely agree.
I'm going to disagree. I saw that trailer in the Microsoft E3 conference theater, and I was a mess.
Yeah.
I was a mess. I don't know.
It was a big pop-up moment, for better or worse.
If you go back to, I don't know if you can go back to, the actual conference footage, but, I literally stood up and screamed when Evan Spencer introduced the trailer. And I had friends literally message me saying, was that you that yelled?
That's great.
The conference. I was like, yes, that was me. And, no, I was the one person in the entire theater that was actually excited that Kingdom Hearts was being shown at the Xbox conference finally for the first time.
No, I was excited too. I just meant that I think for marketing and advertising purposes, it was a great moment to show because it created such a huge conversation. Just for me personally, I was like, damn, if I didn't know that this was happening, and it wasn't just that moment, but there were a few moments where I was like, damn, if I didn't know this was happening, I would probably be breaking down right now, at home, and it would have been a better experience just for me to have not have known what was coming up.
But regardless of the spoilers, I guess, I think it touched on the darker elements of the Kingdom Hearts series I've been wanting to see for a while. And I don't know, it tested Sora, it challenged him, and I really wanted to see that. Because he was super happy-go-lucky, he was annoying in Dream Drop Distance in a way. And then in this one, it gave him a bit more of a, I don't know, it gave him a bit more to work with, I guess.
He was less naive. He was less naive.
Exactly. There's a bit of
he was a fucking, empty-headed idiot. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. Speaking of Dream Drop Distance, that is something I really like about that game, because up until that point, when you went to a Disney World, for the most part, you had, what would Sora do if he saw the Disney characters? And Birth by Sleep gave you other characters' perspective, Terraven and Aqua. But the thing with them is, even though it was cool seeing their reaction to Disney characters as well, they were new characters at the time. What Dream Drop Distance did was something that fans had wanted for a long time. What would Riku do when he sees the Disney characters going around? Because he's a character that people actually knew, but you never really got to see that. Because in Chain of Memories, you did play as Riku, but he didn't meet any Disney characters because he only saw the villains in the Heartless. So Dream Drop Distance gave you the opportunity to see what would Riku do if he met certain Disney characters. How would he react to them? And he reacted a lot, pretty much how you think he would. But sometimes he would do something that would surprise you. Like when he did the One for All thing in the Musketeer world in Dream Drop Distance. Oh, that's adorable.
I didn't play Dream Drop Distance, so I don't have a reference for that.
Honestly, you should, Jerel. I think you would enjoy Dream Drop Distance.
But for me, not having the same experience as you guys with the entire Kingdom Hearts series, I really enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 3. I liked it a lot. There were some really annoying points. I won't lie. There are things, moments where I think character decisions just were like didn't make sense to me. Like my biggest gripe probably still is Maleficent being almost useless. Another one I have is in the base game, hyping up for Kairi and Axel to do some cool stuff, and fighting with them for like 5 seconds in the end was a letdown a little bit for me. Also, the whole ending of Masters, boxes, Lushu, all that shit, none of it being explained is still like oh my god, like how long will I have to go on before I find out whatever was in the fucking black box? Like, come on. So
what's in the box?
Yes, to tell me what the heck is in the box.
I want to piggyback off that real quick. Kingdom Hearts 3 was, again, this is the end of the Darkseeker saga, answered a lot of questions in regards to Xehanort himself. However, in that same breath, we also got Maleficent's entire role in this Kingdom Hearts 3, which is meant to be a finale game of sorts. Her entire role in the game was set up for what's to come. Same thing with Lushu, and even Xehanort's motivations of why he did all this in the first place. Dark Road, the whole game is like, it's meant to be like, why does Xehanort think this in the first place? Why does he want to restart the world? That's what Dark Road seeks to answer. But it's not considered part of the Darkseeker saga. Nomura has explicitly said that Dark Road is technically the first entry in whatever the new saga is, even though it's dealing with Xehanort's origins. Which I'm like, excuse me, what?
But it wasn't good setup. Like, Maleficent was useless. Like, had you taken her out of the game,
it
would have been exactly the same.
I'm just saying it's weird that the finale game is what decided to make Maleficent setup and not have any finality at all. But,
Well, Brandon, actually, since you haven't, would you like to tell us how you felt about Cage 3 so I can... after this, I want to ask you guys a few questions and then we'll end. But how did you feel about Cage 3?
Sure. So, for KH3, I've had about almost like 2 years at this point to like really stew on this opinion to make sure it's true. But honestly, I still feel the same way about this. Kingdom Hearts 3 is currently my favorite Kingdom Hearts game. And there's a few reasons why I feel this way. First off, it's emotional to me because the Disney worlds in this game, I feel resonate with me more than any other Kingdom Hearts game personally. Like, there's been a lot of great Disney worlds that have appeared in Kingdom Hearts. Like, my favorite like animated Disney movie is The Lion King, but it's like the only one in Kingdom Hearts 2 that I really adore. Whereas the other ones, I'm like, oh, those are Disney movies that I like, but I don't have like a personal attachment per se. But almost every Disney world that's in 3, I have a personal attachment. Toy Story is my all-time favorite Pixar movie. I adore Monsters Inc. Pirates of the Caribbean I love, and I did really enjoy the world because I liked how exploring the different islands. It gave me very Wind Waker vibes, going through all the different islands. Big Hero 6 was definitely rushed, but it's still one of my favorite Disney movies, so I was just happy to be there, have Baymax on my side, and explore this big-ass city with all the different things there. What else? Tangled was a movie I also really enjoyed. It's not talked about enough, I feel. Frozen, of course, is like a modern classic. So yeah, every single Disney world that was in Kingdom Hearts 3, something I had a very personal attachment to, and that meant a lot to me. It has one of the best soundtracks of the series. Gameplay-wise, for a while it was pretty much like recency bias, I will fully admit. But the thing is, with Remind, besides the DLC, they also did like a lot of patches to like improve the gameplay itself. And the gameplay now with Kingdom Hearts 3, with all the patches, has now gotten to a point where it's the most comfy game for me to play of all the ones. So I can go back to that one at any time. The Remind DLC, the Remind is okay, but the Limit Cut fights are where it's really at. They're just such intense fights that they're like my favorite boss fights in like the series, even though they have very little plot associated with them. And visually looks good. The music is great. I loved all the 11th hour stuff. All the organization fights are really cool. Remind makes them even better with how you play as other characters. There's just like, even though the story was I admit, disjointed in a way where all the really important stuff really happened at the end. And fundamentally, Kingdom Hearts, even though I adore the story and obviously follow it very closely, fundamentally I got into the series because of the Disney characters. So even if nothing really happens in the Disney world, I'm just happy to be there and see Sora and crew just interact with all these Disney characters and have a great time. And I really felt like I got that with Kingdom Hearts 3. Even if the bosses, I would have loved more Disney bosses, as we brought up in part 1 and Chris did as well. But I enjoyed what I got. like seeing all the different Disney worlds and just interacting with all the different characters. Journal entries the series has never looked better. Yeah, I absolutely adore Kingdom Hearts 3.
Cameron.
Yeah.
Favorite Kingdom Hearts character and why?
Oh, Riku. It's Riku. I've kind of explained in this podcast and the previous episode as to why I see a lot of myself in that character. I just like his character development and everything that all the trials that he went through, and even though I think that he really got shafted hard in Kingdom Hearts 3, I really like Riku, and I'm looking forward to seeing how his character progresses moving forward.
Chris, same question.
Yeah, to me, it's Sora. Just because, like, he's a dude who isn't afraid to get emotional or is afraid to show his feelings. He's, like, that's the reason why he stands out to me as my favorite video game character, because I can relate to him so much. He cares about his friends, and he's willing to stand up for them through thick and thin, and I think that's a really good trait.
And Brandon, same question.
I have an answer, and then I want to give an honorable mention that'll be very brief. But my actual favorite is Terra, actually, from Birth by Sleep. And the reason I like him a lot is because he's very much like this tragic character. And I'm a sucker for those kind of characters where he's really just trying to do his best, but he doesn't know how to do that, and he's like always like subject to the darkness that goes him. He's very much a meathead in a lot of sections. Like, he gets played around a lot by the Disney villains. Like, when he goes to the Disney worlds, he more often than not encounters the villains as opposed to the heroes. And sometimes he's smart enough to catch them on their game, and sometimes he leads right into the traps. But it's the fact that he's always trying to, like, get past that and be better is what I really admire about him. And then I feel sorry for him when he ultimately fails, but then finds success in Kingdom Hearts 3 through his friends when he realizes you can't do it all by yourself. So in a way, Terra, in a very different way than any other Kingdom Hearts character, learns the value of friendship in that regard. The honorable mention I want to give to, only because he's a very new character, is Brain from Union Cross.
Oh.
Because Brain has such a cool design. I really adore his fedora with the feather hat. But he's also, in the writing of Union Cross, he's doing the most out of any of the other characters. The rest of them are like, let's just rebuild the worlds. That's fine, right? I mean, that's what the Master told us to do. Brain's like, hold on, but why are we doing this? What can we do better? What if we just go in the same path they led us to? Wait, there's a darkness out there. We need to find out who the darkness is. Like, he's doing so much in the plot right now, while the other characters are just trying to go on autopilot. He's trying to change destiny and make it better. So I want to see what happens with his character, and I hope he appears in a future Kingdom Hearts game because, oh man, just what they have for Brain so far. He has the potential to be my favorite character, but there's just too little of him right now, and so I can't really pick him. But Terra is my current favorite.
All right, so my next question for all of you is, if someone were to ask you, why should I play Kingdom Hearts, what would you say? Starting with Cameron.
There's so many reasons. If you love Disney, you should play Kingdom Hearts. If you love JRPGs, you should play Kingdom Hearts. If you love Final Fantasy, you should play Kingdom Hearts. Like, if you want a compelling narrative, but one that you have to work for, that isn't just, like, handed out to you on a silver platter, like, I don't know, I just think that, like, I like storylines where you have to invest into the characters and everything that's going on, because then you get, like, even though Kingdom Hearts isn't, like, obviously there's some, like, nonsensical stuff in the series, making the investment into the story, like, I've gotten some of the biggest payoffs for, like, any video game story ever. Like,
completely agree.
And it's just totally worth it. You know what I mean? Like, again, like, I thought that Kingdom Hearts 3 wasn't the payoff that I wanted to until the Remind DLC, and I was like, this is what I wanted. Like, so I'm satisfied in that regard, despite me thinking that there are other games in the series that are better than Kingdom Hearts 3. So yeah, it's really just those are, like, the many reasons why I think that Kingdom Hearts 3 or Kingdom Hearts as a franchise is worth getting into. I know that, like, specifically Kingdom Hearts 1 hasn't aged very well, and might be hard to get through, but once you get farther into it, like, it's it's a really fun roller coaster.
Kingdom Hearts 1 is actually my favorite game in the series. Actually,
I enjoy 1 a lot.
I can understand why. I can understand why.
The story is really concise. It's it has beginning, middle, and end to it, just in case, they didn't get a sequel.
It's very.
I think the voice acting's great, and I love the exploration style gameplay of the original rather than the others, where it's more linear.
Yeah.
So, for example, it's like a Metroidvania in a way, where you get new abilities and then you go back to the original worlds and you figure out puzzles within the world. So I love that element of the first game. Just to defend it, I know its faults. It has a bad camera, but I do like the platforming elements of the original game that aren't present in the other titles. But in general, I would recommend the Kingdom Hearts series. Just because it has a excellent story that's in depth and you have to really think on it. So it really appreciates its audience. I feel like the combat is kind of unmatched. It's nothing like it. It's like off the wall anime like action with high production values and incredibly satisfying attacks. And I love the reaction commands in Kingdom Hearts 2 especially because it's like a combo in the fighting game. Like Sora looks flash while he's taking out Heartless in the stylish fashion. I remember that dragon boss in Land of the Dragons, where he's on his stomach and he's like doing like different slashes, and then the Heartless boss kind of like flips over in this really cool fashion, and Sora just lands on the ground like a fucking superhero. Sorry if I swore. Like if I'm swearing, if that's not,
it's fine.
I didn't ask about
totally
that.
Fine. Fuck it.
But yeah, it isn't just I remember like this infamous IGN review of Kingdom Hearts 2 where it's like, oh, you just press X to win, but it's way more than that.
Yeah.
It's not a senseless hack and slash. You have to think about your every move. Do I block the incoming attack? Do I roll? Do I get cheeky and go for another string of attacks? There's way more to the combat than people think.
Yeah.
I think people really need to give it a chance.
Brandon, same question. Like, what would you suggest for people to play Kingdom Hearts? Also, for any of you guys as well, what draws you back to the series? What you've said so far?
Yeah. So for me, they touched on it a little bit, but there's no action RPG quite like it. Like, Kingdom Hearts was certainly not the very first action RPG, but it's one of the ones that defined the genre, I would say, because of how it streamlined things. There's multiple difficulty options, so even if you're not the best at these kind of action games, you can play the lower difficulty and enjoy what's in front of you. It's very accessible, and for the more seasoned gamers, you can definitely play on the harder difficulties, where you cannot just smash X to win. On the harder difficulty, you really do need to think about what you're doing if you really want to win. Otherwise, some of the later enemies will rock you. But aside from the gameplay, speaking from my perspective, I came in because I enjoy Disney properties a lot, and you see all these different characters of all different kinds. You come in for the Disney characters, and you'll stay for them, but you also stay for the story that you get as well. Like, most crossover games really have, very fan servicey, disposable stories that you enjoy the characters clashing, and that's pretty much all you're getting. With Kingdom Hearts, it's a franchise, and it's a franchise for a reason, because the story has really evolved and continue over. It's gotten a bit convoluted, sure, but it's like, if you play the games, you do understand them, and you're enthralled about what happens next. Like, we spent a good amount of time in this podcast, both this one and the last episode, just theorizing about what could come next, because we're invested in the characters we've seen, the story elements that have been introduced. We want to know what happens next, because at the end of the day, it's just a really good told story, and even the slower parts of the story are still fine because you're meeting Disney characters as you're going. Like, a character that would have been forgettable in any other RPG is memorable because it's Aladdin and you're teaming up with him, right? So it just has all those elements going for it, where you have every moment to moment is fun because of the gameplay and the characters and the story. And there's really no other franchise that can really top that, and just because of the elements that it uses. I didn't recommend anyone to get into it. Like, start if you're not experienced, just do it on a lower difficulty. Enjoy the story because it's worth it, and then if you get better, play it again with a higher difficulty and just see where the depth of the gameplay really goes.
And I would say as well, just to add to that, I think the Disney worlds are kind of like the gateway point to the Kingdom Hearts series.
Sure.
Because like some of my favorite worlds are Twilight Town and Hollow Bastion / Radiant Garden. I think the overall story itself is amazing, and how it blends like the original story of Kingdom Hearts and how it affects like the Disney stories themselves is so fascinating to me. Like I love seeing like these classic stories we know and love get twisted in a way where it's like completely new.
Yeah, you know? I like that.
I'm sure, like I'm a Nightmare Before Christmas fan just because of Kingdom Hearts. You know,
I saw the movie for the first time because of Kingdom Hearts as well. I'm with you there.
And I would, if I was a Nightmare Before Christmas fan, I would have loved like the new story within that world. You know, so it's great just to get all these stories, all this like overall arc of the Kingdom Hearts series in these titles. You know, it's just a wonderful franchise, and it's my favorite of all time.
That's actually a really great way for me to segue into an ending because we're running on time. But yeah, no, it's a really amazing franchise. And first, thank all of you for, coming on and talking to me about Kingdom Hearts, going through the entirety of Kingdom Hearts, explaining to me and everyone else why you guys love the franchise so much. It's been really, eye-opening and awesome to have these types of conversations with you guys. So thank you, Cameron, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Brandon, so much for having these conversations with me. Is there anything that you guys want to get out before I wrap up? Any last little tidbits you want to throw out there?
Play the games in order.
Yeah, play them in
release order.
Chronological
release order.
Yeah, just go on the All for One collection or 1.5 and 2.5 and just play them from game to game.
Yes, and they're I believe all available on Game Pass right now.
Yep.
They are. So if you have an Xbox, you got a PlayStation 4, you got an option, you got the ways to play the entire game. Now, there are a few games in this collection that are only available in movie form, but that's perfectly acceptable. In fact, it'll help you get to catch up on the series faster if that's your goal. Like, you can see the Days movie, the Coded is a movie. That's probably the most appropriate as a movie, but I digress. And then the key is included as back cover, where you see the perspective from the foretellers. Which, as to understand the series so far, that's really all you need. The back cover portion. Future stories may use Union Cross stuff, but I actually have confidence that everything that's happening in Union Cross is going to get retold in another way, be it a movie or a remake of a game. There's too much important stuff that they cannot possibly expect everyone to play all these different missions in the mobile game to just get this important story stuff that's now happening. So I think when it's done, they'll figure out a way to compile it. I have full confidence in that. But until then, you have access to the entire story right now, and I would take advantage because it's a great series.
Xbox Game Pass. But also, I have a question for you. Like, what do you think the Disney Plus series is going to be like? Is rumored right now?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But I think it could cover. My theory is that it could cover Mickey, Donald, and Goofy trying to find clues of where to find Sora throughout all sorts of Disney worlds, and each episode would be a Disney world.
Ooh. Now that's a good idea. Now that's actually a really good idea. I had never even thought about that.
Yeah,
my pocket theory is something that I hear a lot of people saying. This could be their way to tell the Union Cross story in like episodic formats.
Yeah,
because there needs to be a way for that story to get out there that doesn't involve people playing the game, because there's just not enough people that are playing it, and deservedly so. So I would love that, because honestly, if we're talking about a cartoon that can like summarize a lot of the fluff of Union Cross, I think there's a story there worth telling for sure.
The reason why I mention it's probably going to be Mickey, Goofy, and Donald is because they want to attract like a mainstream audience and gain new fans for the Kingdom Hearts series, like The Witcher did for the video game. I know The Witcher wasn't based on the game; it was based on the book, but it still made a massive impact on the game sales. So I think that's probably what they're going for, but we'll see.
I think it would probably just be based off the games.
Okay.
Because, I definitely don't see the Union Cross thing happening, because then like that would be only for such a specific audience.
Yeah, I completely agree with Cameron.
And then with the Mickey, Donald, and Goofy stuff, that just doesn't seem necessary to me. I don't know. I think Kingdom Hearts is a big enough name now that like if those that don't feel like playing it but would like want to watch like a I wouldn't say anime style, but like, animated version of the games with the events of Kingdom Hearts with all of the, good action that it has. They can do that.
It would be nice to see all that stuff in Kingdom Hearts 3 engine, like the rumors are saying. That'd be great.
I mean, I would watch it, and I think I agree with Cameron. I think it'd be a really great way for people who have maybe heard of the title but not played it before, or like I said, friends of mine who started with KH3 because of Disney and they don't know anything, past that, who don't want to invest in the time. I think the series would be really great for that. But anyway, and with that, I am going to finally end this podcast. Once again, thank you guys so much for being on this with me. And I'm going to actually probably go play Lemmy Cut now, because I never finished it. So thank you once again, all of you, and I will talk to everyone else later. Bye, everybody!
Bye!
Bye!